Good evening. I'm Patrick Moser. I'm Assistant Vice President of Student Affairs here at Western. On behalf of President Rex Fuller, who wanted to be here this evening, but unfortunately had a previous obligation, I'd like to welcome you to Western Oregon University and to this 2018 Candidates Forum. Thank you to the candidates for being here, and welcome to all of you who have joined us this evening to learn more about these candidates. Western Oregon University and the Associated Students of Western Oregon University are delighted to partner with the Monmouth-Indendence Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Center to provide this forum featuring the candidates for House District 20 and the mayoral and city councilors for Independence in Monmouth. Western is especially excited to provide this venue for tonight's forum because many of our students, staff, and faculty call Monmouth and Independence home. We are looking forward to this very informative evening, learning more about our community's candidates for elected office. I would now like to welcome your moderator for this forum this evening, Dr. Mark Kinkels, who is Professor of Political Science here at Western.
Well, greetings and welcome. It's Friday night in Monmouth, and this is the hottest thing going. And let me just say one thing. I teach a lot of political science, and a lot of times when I'm talking about it, I say, well, this is what goes on way over there amongst people that we can't influence and we can't have an impact. One thing I can say about this context, you can make a difference on these people, and everything you say in this meeting goes with them. So, without any further delays, what we're going to do tonight is it's a question format from the audience, and after we do a brief introduction where each person simply says who they are and what they're running for, then I'm going to go to the questions that have been submitted, and each of the candidates that it's directed towards will get up to 3 minutes to answer. And it's very important that we keep on time because there's a lot of people are interested in a lot of things, and we have a lot of candidates. So, without further delay, if we could just start with John Kerry here, if you could just say who you are and what you're running for so that we break the ice, and then we'll move to the questions.
My name's John Kerry. I'm a candidate for the City Council of Monmouth.
I'm Selma Pierce, and I'm running for State Rep for House District 20.
I'm Steve Milligan.
Oh.
I'm Steve Milligan. I'm running for City Council for the City of Monmouth.
John McCardle, Mayor of Independence.
I'm Paul Evans. I'm running for re-election to House District 20, which is Monmouth, Independence, West Salem, and South Salem.
Marilyn Morton, running for re-election to position 2 of the Independent City Council.
Stephen Howard, and I'm running for Monmouth City Council.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Kuntz. I go by Cease. I am running for the position of Mayor of Monmouth, and I would be the first woman elected to that position.
I'm Jack Waddell, and I'm running for Mayor of Independence.
Hello, I'm Chris Lopez, and I'm running for Monmouth City Council.
Hi, I'm Shannon Cocaine, and I'm running for position 1, Independent City Council.
I'm Kevin Chambers. I'm running for Monmouth Mayor.
I'm Roxanne Belts, and I'm running for re-election for Monmouth City Council.
All right, terrific. So, first question for Jack Waddell. How can independents balance their budget? Jack?
Well, this is one of the main reasons I am running. And, you know, there's been multiple projects that have just completely put our city in a lot of debt. There's millions of dollars of debt. And I just feel as if what we need to do is stop the bleeding and figure out what we can do to you know, increase our chances of success with the new projects that are already underway, and focus on what we already have in the city and what we need repaired. You know, the different items. I think these huge ventures that we've set off into have been a great mistake. And I wish that it could be driven by the private sector. So I think we have to go in it and line by line see, you know, where are we? We don't need more spending. we need to figure out how to get our debt under control is my position.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's extended questions for one candidate, then we'll also move to the other candidates for the same position. But when they're directed towards one person, we're going to go to that person as the audience has requested, okay? So the second question is for the candidates for District 20, Paul and Selma. Where do you stand on Measure 106 and why? Selma, why don't you go first?
On Measure 106, I plan to vote no. The U.S. Supreme Court has stated that abortion should be legal, available, and safe for women, and that there should be no interference from the government. It would also be that it would be between a woman and her doctor. However, I will be working to minimize the number of abortions through education, contraceptives, and options to be presented to women. I am not for late-term abortions. I am for parental notification.
Paul?
Yeah, I won't move the mic, sorry. I was one of the first, I believe I was one of the first legislators that came out against 106, and the reasons are several. The first is that my mom and grandma actually grew up in an environment where healthcare was not readily available for those that did not have means, and I refuse to live in a state where people that are very wealthy have access to health services that people that cannot afford it do, especially given the dynamics when it comes to women's reproductive health. The other thing that I think is most important on this is that 106, in my mind, is the beginning. It is a camel's nose under the tent to try to take away women's control over their own bodies. And I spent a number of years overseas in places where women don't have control over their bodies, and that's not going to happen as long as I'm here. So I'm very much against 106.
Okay, thank you. The next question is directed towards Kevin and Cease. What is your plan for growth, development, and sustainability for businesses in Monmouth?
Cease, did you want to go first? Okay. So this is not going to be a surprise, but Build Monmouth. We need to lower our SDCs. When someone wants to put in a car wash next to Dairy Queen but wants to pay $50,000 before that car wash is built, we're not very pro-growth and pro-build. What we also got to realize is we're limited by private land that citizens don't want to sell. So we're limited in our growth. So we need to develop the commercial lots we have. I know we're getting Carl's Jr. in. I know there's wants to be a car wash next to Dairy Queen, and we need to continue to work on developing the S-curve property, which will also increase our general fund revenue to go to public safety.
And I think, having been on City Council for 4 years and on the Economic Development Commission before that, I think those are really good points that Kevin makes. We are a city that's kind of torn between whether or not we want to grow or we want to just continue to be a small town. And I think part of determining how we develop and grow is going through a really more formal process to look at what we want, who we are, what are our assets in growing. We've unfortunately kind of let Highway 99, our gateway, the entry to our living room, become sort of a not very welcoming environment, and trying to determine whether or not we can change that and whether or not that would help our other businesses grow and develop is something we need to look at. But keeping our small town businesses, almost all of our businesses, I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and we just have a lot of mom and pop businesses. We need to keep those folks in business. We need to figure out how to grow with what we have.
Okay, so for Selma and Paul, where do you stand on Measure 104? Paul, if you could go first this time.
I'm against 104. I think that for those that are kind of following along on the numbers game for the ballot measures, 103 and 104 have to do with basically limiting the legislature's ability to make decisions having to do with finances. I think 104 would make it very difficult to govern the state of Oregon by having a 3/5 majority related to any increases in fees. I think that's a bad path. It's difficult enough with taxes. With fees, we would literally be needing 3/5 of the legislature to raise the fishing license. which you can't run certain organizations if you have to wait every so often to be able to do that from the legislative body. It will also, I think, have a unanticipated consequence of making every single fee vote something of a political chaos, because everybody will be wanting to trade for different projects here and there to be able to get the fees passed. So I think it's bad policy. I understand people are concerned about the price and the costs of government. I'm concerned as well, but I'm very concerned that we continue to try to tweak through the ballot initiative process to the point that Oregon at some point may become ungovernable, and I don't think that that's a smart plan.
Okay, Selma.
I am for 104. I would be voting yes on that. I do believe that when we are working to raise fees or revenue, and we're thinking about taking more money from our citizens, we need to have a higher level of scrutiny. So I think 3/5 majority would be appropriate in this case.
Okay, thank you. So here's a broader question for candidates for the Monmouth City Council. Cities all over the U.S. pay for sidewalk repair out of the general fund. Monmouth, however, requires individual property owners to pay to repair public sidewalks, whether they can afford it or not. What are your thoughts on this? We can start with, let's start with Roxanne.
So, since I'm currently on City Council, we've been addressing the issue of sidewalks for a number of meetings, which is actually pretty frustrating. We've yet to come to a very solid solution. It's difficult for a lot of our citizens to be able to afford to pay to fix completely their sidewalk. We're talking upwards of $4,000 and $5,000. What we have talked about, which is what I'm going to continue to push for with council, and remember, City Council means there are 6 individual councilors. We all have an individual vote. It needs to be a majority. But what I want to continue to talk about is setting up a sidewalk maintenance fund, whether that's from the transportation budget, whether that's a sidewalk maintenance fee that everyone in the community will pay a small portion of, or whether it's applying for a number of the grants that are available. But I believe the city should at least share half of the cost of fixing the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, next.
Yes, so.
Oh, sorry, Howard. Sorry.
Like roads, sidewalks are public infrastructure. Every property owner actually has an easement on their property, at least 2 feet behind their sidewalk, for the city to put in their pipes and their wires and anything else the city needs to do. So just because it's private land doesn't mean it's private infrastructure. And I feel like just like roads are used for people to transport on, sidewalks are the same, and they should be paid for by the city.
Okay, thank you. Royal? Is Royal here?
Nope.
No. Chris Lopez.
Thank you very much. When you break this down, this is more than just about sidewalks. This is about ADA accessibility issues. This is about the beauty of our town. This is about the safety of our town. And this comes down to the kind of place that we want to call home and want to live in. And there are times when you try to do what's fair. And I think that Monmouth Council currently is making a great effort to do what's fair. This is one of those situations where, depending on which side you're on, it's hard to say what's fair. Nobody wants to raise taxes. Nobody wants to increase fees. Nobody wants to see more funds come out of the general fund or be diverted from roads. But this is more than just about what's fair. This is about what's right. And what's right is to not burden the individual homeowner with the cost of sidewalk repair. And I think that this concept applies to more than sidewalks. And I think we need to determine what kind of town we want to live in, and we need to make that a reality together.
Okay, thank you. John Kerry.
It's our understanding, we have had, as Roxanne mentioned, we've had numerous discussions about this on sort of the, if not 30,000 feet, maybe 10,000 foot level to determine the best way to maintain the infrastructure, and especially in this case in front of private residents. It is the norm in Oregon that the sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owner. That protects them from liability concerns and a variety of other things if they maintain their sidewalks in an appropriate manner. Currently, our enforcement is complaint-driven. So if someone walks up, trips on your sidewalk, and they complain about it, the city will look, will determine that, whether that's in compliance or whether it's not. And currently, it is the responsibility of the property owners to maintain what they've always been responsible for. We have some areas in town with large trees that have uprooted and caused some heaving in the sidewalks. And that's our particular area of focus and our area of concern. There's a study going on right now. We're evaluating citywide what the condition of our sidewalks are. Once that's completed, I think we'll be able to take a serious look on how we want to do that. Personally, I'm interested in getting those critical areas where the city can partner with the homeowner and get that resolved. It absolves their liability as well as the city's liability. That's the short term. The long term on this city tax that we're talking about imposing is being kicked around. That's another topic, and we'll get to that after we get through sort of our initial critical time.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is for
Can I have a chance to
I'm so
answer
sorry,
the question?
Well,
Yeah.
It's a big field.
So sidewalks in Monmouth started out as boards, and they broke and people got hurt, and the liability fell on the property owner. Now there's sidewalk cement. People have planted trees. Concrete has aged in a lot of neighborhoods. It's not a conversation that just started within the last 2 years. It's been a conversation that's been going on for quite a while. I've been a participant in the Monmouth City Council and as mayor for the last 16 years, and it's something that we've had a concern for our citizens. We've been approached by people with disabilities and mobility challenges to do something. And it's always in the city, it's like, how much are the citizens willing to pay for the service that's provided? And so right now, as John said, we're doing a study to find out how much sidewalk repair actually needs to be done within the city, what that cost would look like, and how to help the citizens in making that happen. So it's something that we're working on. We're not ignoring the citizens. We're trying to do what's best for the city budget and our citizens' pocketbooks. We have approached in the past citizens a couple times looking at fees, and depending on what we're asking for, they've given it to us, they haven't given it to us. So it's one in which, as we get the information out to the citizens, it'll be easier for them to help us make that decision on who pays for what and how much they pay or how much the city pays in combination. So that's where we're working.
Thank you. Excuse me for that. Now, another one for the House District 20 candidates. Where do you stand on Measure 101? Do you support the expansion of Medicaid? Selma? That was the bill that was already voted on, of course.
I was wondering who should go first. Yes, healthcare is a very valuable item for every citizen, and I always feel, since I am a dentist, that it would be nice for all our citizens to be able to have insurance and be able to use it and help themselves, because without it, it's very difficult. I have actually coordinated the Mission of Mercy that was in Salem, where we were taking care of patients that did not have insurance, and it is very sad to see when you have people lining up 24 hours ahead of time to get free care because they were not able to and did not have insurance, so they could not do it all. So it was very important to me that patients do have insurance.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard the answer if she voted for or against 101. but I voted for 101 because in the legislature we expanded access to health care for about 400,000 Oregonians, and a legislator did not like that, and she organized a group and put it before the people for a public vote in support or not in support of expanding access to health care. Health care is one of those things that if we are going to have a chance to compete in the 21st century, we have to figure out a way to make sure that retirement is more secure, that health care is more available, or we risk becoming a second or third class country. My mom did not have access to good health care growing up, and while I can't prove this, I'm pretty certain that had she had better health care, she might not have died at 47 because of cancer that we found too late. So I believe that actions matter. I proudly supported passage of 101, and I believe that it is one of the most important investments that we need to look at expanding over time.
Thank you. Summer, would you like to clarify your position on 101 itself?
I do believe that healthcare is a very important asset for our citizens, and that I find that I am for healthcare for everyone. I think Oregon's doing a great job. 95% of our citizens do have health insurance at this time, which is a great number. There are still some people that need to be on it, but I do believe that is something that our citizens should have.
Okay, this one's directed to Paul. You say you're an advocate for small business, but in 2017 you voted yes for HB 2060, which imposed $667 million tax burden. How do you respond to that?
If only I had a nickel for every time I've been asked that. There are a number of bills that, in the lead up to passage, the very same folks that the next day try to disparage your character over voting for were pleading for you to vote for. That particular bill did far more good than harm. In many cases, the folks that are trying to say that it was a bad move forward don't understand how we leverage federal dollars and what would have happened had we not taken that vote. So again, one of the things you learn when you are in government is that the big votes take a while to get there. They're complex. And in this particular one, though I recognized that there was some impact, we did everything we could to minimize impact to actual small businesses. This might not be surprising, but some people who call themselves small businesses aren't, and some people who are nonprofits do not act like nonprofits in the hospital and healthcare industry. And in this particular case, I think that the impact and burden on small business was minimized to the greatest degree possible to still provide a public good.
Okay. Next question is directed towards the candidates for the City of Independence mayorship. What investments have the city made to build on the local economy of Independence? Why don't we start with John?
Thank you.
And then we'll go to Jack.
We've done a bunch to have helped our economy. We've invested in infrastructure that has brought a hotel that's under construction. It's a $50 million in total of investment, and we put in $3 to $4 million of infrastructure to help make that happen. The other things that we've done in our community is through our urban renewal districts, we set up the environment that has allowed business to flourish. Industry has come, hundreds and hundreds of jobs. The state has told us that more than 700 new jobs have come to Independence since 2010, 22 new businesses, and $27 million in additional payroll. So we've done that. MINET is also a great part of what makes Independence a wonderful place. So we made those kind of investments that are reaping the benefits all the way through our community, from downtown infrastructure to the transportation, water and sewer infrastructure. All those kind of things have helped move Independence to be one of the top and most exciting places in the United States, as you can tell by our All-America City Award a few years ago.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Okay, and of course I'm going to be in complete contrast. I think that MINET is the reason why our water bills are excessive in this town. Where they're putting the hotel, they've used SDC money that should be working on Gun Club Road and the issues up there, and our infrastructure that's falling apart. And I know this firsthand. I believe that the city of Independence needs to leave investment and development to professionals who know what they're doing. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, in my life, what I've experienced, if you do a job and you bid it for $200,000 and it comes in at $300,000, that means you lost $100,000. And you know, they just continue to lose. MINET has lost a tremendous amount of money. They feel as if they've made this huge progress by, at least to the best of my knowledge, it's gone from 2.2 to $1.1 million of debt a year. We have example after example of massive debt that my children, but the residents who I live with, the people in my community, we got to pay for it. And I think it's time for the City of Independence to get out of the business of development unless you're going to make a profit. If you're going to lose money, you need to get out of it. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running. And I respect John, and he's been a great mayor and a super person. And I hate to be negative, but that's the facts. And so I hope to be able to do something about that.
Okay. This is for the Monmouth City Council candidates. Are you willing to rescind the current sidewalk ordinance immediately and then do a study, or vice versa? Sidewalks matter around here. Anyone walking around knows.
Hot topic.
So if you want to just reiterate what your positions are of a study or versus rescinding the law immediately. Well, why don't we start with Cease? Oh, no, not Cease. Roxanne again.
Again, because we've been talking about this for months and months, and I have actually been concerned about, one of my issues is about having safe, walkable communities. That's part of community livability. And I wasn't part of the vote that put in the idea of having the homeowner pay for the sidewalks. If, as one counselor, I can have one vote, it will be to rescind the rule we have immediately. We don't need that on the books right now. We need to be talking with homeowners that are stressed about this, and we know there are, if I remember right, 7 homeowners right now who are, they're in the balance as to whether they're going to have to do this or not do this. They can't find contractors that will do the work. I'm concerned about a patchwork or a Band-Aid look if we have a bunch of different contractors doing the different work. So I would definitely vote, if I could vote today, to rescind that. I don't think we need more studies. I think what we need to do is figure out what is the right thing to do and how can we help our community.
Okay. How about John Kerry?
Thanks, Mark. I would not be in favor of rescinding the sidewalk ordinance that we have at the present time, because there's a number of people that, when notified that they had a non-compliant sidewalk based on a complaint from a citizen, they received notification from the city. They've gone out and they've paid for whatever repair was necessary. We've got a few that are still in the pipeline. Probably, we don't know exactly how many. I don't want to go in now and say, well, those of you that paid previously, we're going to excuse the remainder from any further obligation until we you come up with something. As I said before, I think the city needs to partner with the landowners and assist them to get that done. I think rescinding the ordinance has been around for a long, long time. Would be premature, and I don't think it would be fair to those that have complied with and brought their sidewalks up to code.
Okay, Steve Milligan.
Sure. What I want to say is that this sidewalk issue along with some other issues this past year, have been a city council that's reacting in knee-jerk form, and that's not good city governance. There's a tendency for one or two citizens to come up and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to change for them. And that's not how city government works. Right now, we're currently in the midst of doing a study. And one of the things that I like in city government too is like an aircraft carrier moving across the ocean. If you want to turn it around, it takes a lot of ocean. And what we're trying to do is make a city council act like a PT boat that can turn on a dime. And we don't need to be turning on dimes because we're going to like spin our citizens' heads. We're going to blow our employee morale completely apart, where we'll become a dysfunctional city. So that's where I'm at. It's like sidewalks are systemic of the knee-jerk reaction of the bees, the Apple Box Theater. Can't remember what one of the other one was, but there have been like 3 or 4 where it's just like, oh, we got to completely change policy, and that's not good governance.
Okay, and Chris Lopez?
I'm glad to hear other sitting and prospective councilors mention fairness. Back to what is fair. Regardless of when you make that change, if there's a change to be made, there will always be someone who has recently complied that, you know, would be unfair to. Regardless of whether we punt this down the road a month, 6 months, a year, longer even. Sidewalks are a conversation that I don't see ending. I see sidewalks as a conversation that, once again, is about the livability of the town, and a conversation that, while it may not be a glamorous or sexy subject, will eventually come up again. And we can punt it down the road and wait for it to come up again, wait for 1 or 2 people to write a letter, wait for someone to trip and fall, wait for somebody else to complain, or we can take care of it now. It's come up before, and I'd like to see it taken care of now instead of just put down the road. To directly answer the question, I have read through the city charter cover to cover. I read through our CC&Rs in our neighborhood cover to cover before moving into the home. Some people may think I'm crazy. There's a lot of really wonky things in both of those documents that we're all bound to. That being said, if you find them, you're obligated to fix them, especially if there are complaints. And I think that this is one of those scenarios. Now, to speak to cost, there are ways to do this that don't require a comprehensive study. There are ways to do this that don't allow for a burgeoning investment. There are ways to do this in a controlled manner with small amounts and a set amount that comes each year. And each year you chip away at it. This is not a problem that's been born over a short period of time. There are areas of the town without sidewalks that, when building codes allowed, didn't have sidewalks put in. There are areas with sidewalks that have been in disrepair for many years. And so to think that this problem is going to be fixed overnight, no, it's certainly not, but we can start the fix now. And I'd like to see it repealed, and I'd like to see that fix start now.
Okay.
Stephen Howard.
Oh, God, I'm sorry, Stephen.
There's a lot of us.
I was trying to mix it up, and I really did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So even though I'm not on council yet, I've been sitting through most of these meetings and listening to council debate this. So I wouldn't say at this point that council's been rushing this decision. I feel like the long-term plan is looking at city sidewalks as a city asset. And so the long-term solution is it's the city's responsibility. Chris is right that there's always going to be somebody who just fixed their sidewalk. And so city council is going to have some work to decide, do we do a partial compensation? How far back do we go? Those are all decisions that have to happen in conjunction. But the right answer is to make this a public responsibility, not a private one.
Thank you. Isn't it nice to be in a context where they let other people speak on purpose? It's good. Okay, so the next question is directed towards Selma Pierce. how do you intend to vote on Measure 105?
I intend to vote no on Measure 105. This is an issue about the sanctuary state, and there are some people looking to change it so that it would allow law enforcement, local law enforcement, to operate more closely with the immigration. That is something that is not agreed on by even all the sheriffs in the state. There are 16 that are for it, and the rest are against it. So I feel that in our community, there are a lot of people who are coming from immigrant families, as my own family is, and I feel like it would be very disruptive. Also, I do feel that we do need Congress to do comprehensive immigration reform, and this would be just a piecemeal part that people are trying to do, and it would just make it more confusing. The other thing is we have a lot of immigrants who are here legally or who are now citizens, particularly children, and they are concerned about their parents being separated from them. We already went through that this summer where parents and children were separated, so we do not need to do that. So I will be voting no on 105.
Okay. This question is directed towards, I'm going by if they say one candidate, presumably they have a reason. Okay, and this one's directed towards Kevin Chambers and asks, please outline the role of the mayor and state what you would like to accomplish in that position.
So I essentially say the mayor's job is to look pretty at opening ceremonies. My wife says I'm going to do a good job at that. I'm not so sure. No, I think the mayor really can do a good job of helping bridge the citizens and the city council. I'm going to have a meet your mayor Monday, at least once a month, where I'll go to local businesses and people can come in and talk to me with their issues, and I'll make sure to put together a nice little packet that I'll give to the city council and talk about at my mayor report. One thing I want to do is more civic involvement, and I want to see the city council do a kid mayor program for our local youth, where for 3 months we'll have a grade school kid be a kid mayor, 3 months we'll have a middle school kid be a kid mayor, and for 3 months we'll have a high school kid be a kid mayor, and really talk about issues that kids are facing and have a report at the city council and just learn about local city government. So really that's, the mayor as a spearhead, is a sounding board, is hopefully trying to look pretty. I'll try. And I got Shannon to laugh, so that's good. And really just to be a sounding board, and I think a bridge between the citizens and city council. And while you don't get a vote, the mayor represents what the citizens want. If elected, the citizens, I feel, will say we want to invest in public safety more. We want more transparent government. We want more civic involvement. And so that's what I feel the mayor is. So.
Okay. Next question is for Paul Evans. How can Oregon address the looming redistricting attacks?
Looming redistricting attacks.
Well, I would assume it's about how we're going to handle redistricting after 2020 and the fierce competition for gerrymandering, I suppose.
All right, so to try to take a whack at this particular question, in 2020, the census will be taken as it is every 10 years. It is anticipated, of course we said this 10 years ago, but it's anticipated that Oregon might pick up a 6th congressional seat because of population growth. The issue with redistricting in terms of a mechanical problem is where the population distribution really is, where people are moving to, and the goal with redistricting is to have a sense of a community of interest when you put these districts together. I'm not going to say that parties from time to time haven't gotten a little bit creative with what community of interest has been defined as, but what we've recognized is over the course of Oregon's redistricting processes, that because of where the urbanization and where the development and growth has been, it's caused some legitimate challenges in trying to find that balance and fairness. So what I look hopefully forward to being able to do is to continue to make sure that we emphasize civics education and that we emphasize more public engagement. That is not a direct answer to how to make the process as a whole free from gerrymandering, but I happen to believe that one of the biggest problems facing Oregon today is that we have schools that are doing a satisfactory job of producing people for the workforce, but they're doing a horrible job of training people to know how their government functions. And one of the issues related to redistricting is most people don't understand what duties and roles city government or county government or state government has, and that impacts a lot of the ways in which power is distributed and how funds and priorities are made. So to me, the root of the problem is helping citizens understand how government works better and holding folks accountable in a way that we have not been able to do because, again, sometimes campaigns are all about mischaracterization and negative tactics rather than specific issues or specific policies. So to me, it's really a two-step process. We have to increase civics education and we have to make sure that the folks making decisions are held accountable.
Okay. Next question is directed towards the candidates for Independence Mayor. And the question is, under your leadership, what will Independence look like in 5 years? And why don't, Jack, you take the first crack at that.
All right. Well, what I hope it looks like is that we've stopped the bleeding on the debt that we're racking up and actually going the other way. You know, as a, you know, if I'm mayor, you know, as a public servant, I'm listening to what the people of Independence care about. They care about their water bills that are sky high, the sewer bills that have additional charges on them, developing land for developers from Hillsborough on our SDC money. You know, I just hope to stop the bleeding and, you know, actually assess where our money is going and actually help what the residents of Independence actually care about. They're just trying to send their kids to school. They're doing their jobs. They don't have time to get involved in all the details of what's going on in town. What they care about is what directly affects them, and usually it's financial. And so I you know, what I'd like to do in 5 years, say, hey, I did everything I could to not get more money, but actually it decreased the amount of money we're asking you to give us. I want to help people actually live a better life. And if in 5 years, you know, for one, unlike all these fine people up here, this is not a resume builder for me. It's not a career for me. I'm running because nobody else stepped up, and I really feel obligated to do it. And there is a different view. There's a different position of people who I live with, and I just want everybody to be heard, and I want to represent everybody. I don't care what color you are, where you come from, any dynamic. My job is to represent and help people who live in Independence. And that's all I care about. And I believe I'll do a terrific job if I'm elected.
John?
Thank you. Independence in 5 years. Well, let me tell you how we got here to where we are today. The current plan that has created Independence as it is today, 1,000 people were involved in the planning process. 1,000 people provided input and provided direction. So the next part that's going to happen is that we're ready to plan for the next 10 and 20 years because you have to take a long view. And so this next year, the city is planning to move forward and get a lot of input because it's not the city council, it's not the mayor who decides where things are going, it's the folks that live in town who provide the input. And where we've gone in the past is because of the plans that have been put forward and the ideas that people came up with. An amphitheater wasn't just something that came out of the sky. That was the suggestions that people came up with. The kinds of a movie theater That was not something that just came up. Those were the kinds of things that came out of a community plan. Even the high school young people were involved, and the developer heard about that and moved forward and built a movie theater that have 130,000 people a year coming through. Where will we be in 5 years? We keep hearing about this debt. Well, you know, here's what the deal is that, you know, the hotel and the whole complex that's being built down there, yes, we fronted some money up there, but you know how it's going to be paid back? With the taxes and transient occupancy taxes, so the property tax money and then also the room tax money is going to pay back all of that, and that's going to be done within about 8 years, and then after that, it's a net income to the city for the next 100 years. So before we move forward on things like that, we bring in an outside economist that is telling us what makes sense, runs the numbers down, and all these numbers are public record. We've had public meetings about all this. You can find it all on the website, and you can see. So the investments that we've made are all going to be paid back. There's a payback plan for all of these kind of things. We're not just out crazy people. We're out doing the things that people want to get done. We have a payback plan for how it's going to get paid for and how we move the project forward. So what's coming up in the next year, we're going to be planning for the next 10 or 20 years for what our community is going to look like, because that's our responsibility as a community to decide what we want to look like. Back to you, Mark.
Okay. I'm not really sure how to respond to this question, but which candidates are from the Edwards edition, live in the Edwards edition, or have campaigned heavily there? Oh, well, all four of you, this is towards you. And here's the question. I've seen joint campaigning among candidates living in the Edwards Edition neighborhood. What is your agenda or goal for this alliance should one or more of you be elected? And this is inside baseball to me, but all four of you feel free to address what the alliance is about and what it would mean for the city governance.
I'd be happy to begin here. Monmouth is a small community, and you invariably begin to know your neighbors that are a little bit closer to you in distance than the neighbors that are the further. As you walk your dog, as you ride your bike, as you take out your trash, as you sweep your leaves. And these friendships become important, and I think that those levels of friendships, that level of community, is what brings a tightly knit community together. And that is one of the things that I loved about Monmouth when picking it as a place to live. And Edwards Edition, I've heard rumors about, you know, some politics or some things that have gone on in the past. I can honestly say I don't know a heck of a lot about that, and I will say though that it's important that we're all neighbors throughout the town. And as you walk down to the park, as you enjoy music in the park, go to Yeasty Beastie, hang out on a great afternoon, and we're really all neighbors and all trying to go to the same spot with the town and bring it to a better place. To answer that question directly, I have no agenda. These are just the people I know, and it was clear earlier in the year that there was a need for more citizen involvement. There have been Monmouth City Council meetings where not a single citizen was sitting in the room, and it was just the council looking at an empty room. And I don't want to see that anymore. And if that means me sitting in there every couple weeks, I've been to more council meetings than some councilors have. And it's just being involved and trying to do something great for the community. So no agenda directly.
Okay, would anyone else?
And I'll go ahead and take that too, because there are pictures of me walking in the 4th of July parade, and I'm walking with Chris Lopez and Roxanne Belts. And I did that partially because we all thought that would be fun to start our campaigns on the 4th of July and to walk together. But also because as mayor, I would not get a vote, right? The mayor of Monmouth doesn't vote on issues. The mayor has the opportunity to work with the 6 councilors to determine sort of where we want to go on issues. And I like good thinkers. I like people who are thoughtful, who do their research, and who really care. And I have just really been impressed with Chris Lopez, particularly as a newcomer to our community, and all of the work he has done to find out what the issues are. And Roxanne, who also has been on city council. She's had a steep learning curve. It's hard work to do that. And those are a couple people who I think would make good candidates. We just happen to live in the same neighborhood, which means that we do have a chance to run into each other a little more often. But it's not about making the community more like Edwards Edition, except for the fact that that is a true community. We all care about our neighbors. We all get an opportunity to get out there and see each other. And if we can bring more of that to town, that's fine, but it's not really an agenda.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Do you have anything, Roxanne?
I can only reiterate what Chris and Cease have both said. It really was, we're all so close, not Edwards Edition, but everyone within this community. Really, we're just one big neighborhood. And the whole goal when we first met and started talking about this is we said, first off, what are some economies of scale, either socially but also financially? You know, you don't want to invest tens of thousands of dollars in a campaign to be a city councilor. So we thought, can we all use similar artwork? Can we use similar campaign materials? There is no agenda that the three or the four of us have together, other than we all want Monmouth to be the best possible community it can be, just as what I think probably all of you want.
Sure. So, not that it really matters terribly, but I have not been campaigning with these other three. I think highly of them, and I'd certainly be happy to serve with any of them. It's interesting to note that a lot of recent and current councilors currently live in the northeast corner of Monmouth, so read into that what you will. I don't really think there's anything to read into it. On the top of my website, it says, imagining a future to help Monmouth thrive, not any given neighborhood. And my goal is to help Monmouth grow in a way that improves the lives of all members of our community. And that is my agenda.
Well, thank you. Okay, this is directed towards the Monmouth mayoral candidates. As mayor of Monmouth, what would you do to give back and help the students? Cease, and then Kevin.
Well, I have been a part of the Monmouth community for over 30 years. I work in the school district, so students are a huge part of my life. And the students here at Western are also a huge part of my current volunteer time. This week, I'm not sure how I could give back more. I got back from vacation and I spent 4 hours in this room yesterday chairing the Finance and Administration Committee of our Board of Trustees. And my whole goal in doing that is to improve the lives of our students and to improve their success. Making tough decisions about tuition rate increases, working to honor our great faculty here so that we really do improve the lives of citizens, and hopefully having those students become citizens of Monmouth. That's what I love most about it, is all the folks who are here who say, yeah, I went to school here, got married, here we are. That's what makes this community great. I know our students need more jobs. Most of our students actually work for a living, and having jobs that students could get would be as much help as everyone thinking we need another Taco Bell for them to have. And I know that would be a plus, but I can't promise a Taco Bell. But finding ways to get our students jobs, finding ways to connect them more, not only with internships, but with other opportunities in our community, and making sure we have affordable housing for them. It's tough. That is a tough row, and I want to do some of those things because that's how the city partners with Western and with those students to make this a great livable community for everyone.
Okay, Kevin?
So I partly addressed my Kid Mayor program, which I've talked to several kids. I live in Bramblewood Apartments just down here, so I'm walking through Western every day. I'm involved with a church plant here on campus called Resonate. Part of that opportunity is I get to talk to soon-to-be graduates about how hard it is after you graduate. I've helped place over a dozen interns I've had through my business into professional jobs, whether through Sundance, whether through becoming production assistants. So I know how to help people, mentor people to get that job. And it comes down to the numbers that 1 in 1,000 resumes get you a job, 1 in 100 interviews get you a job, and that number seems pretty disappointing. But when you tell them that there's a 1 in 12 chance of getting a job with an informational interview, and you start talking to people with that, they light up. And I've had really good success rates with that. And so I just continue to talk with people, get to know them. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? Well, maybe try this. Have you called this person? I've looked at resumes. And I'm still learning on the fly. I'm still young. But I can relate to the issues we face. I can relate to wanting to buy a house. And Monmouth is cheaper, but I can't afford it from student loans. So I understand not just the issues that graduates face, but the issues that middle schoolers are going to face and high schoolers are going to face. And I understand the issues that their parents are facing trying to get health care for them, which is not anything to do with Monmouth Mayor, sorry. So I understand, and that allows me to relate and allows me to have a real conversation and actually maybe just sometimes people just want to have someone listen to them and provide resources to that. So that just listening, reaching out like I have been, if Kid Mayor program going in and talking to the kids, and as Paul said, really just start teaching civics now.
Okay, thank you. This one's directed towards Selma. How can we expand mental health services to homeless individuals?
Yes, there are a lot of homeless people who could use mental health services. We don't actually have a stable mental health system. I was talking to an individual who is homeless right now, and he said he was schizophrenic. What happens a lot to these people is they have a crisis, law enforcement gets involved, law enforcement takes them to the ED or ER, then they are evaluated and they are treated, if it's possible, for their acute episode. Then they are back on the streets and it cycles again. So what we need to do is make sure that we also develop a system that helps people that have chronic mental health issues, because then they won't be cycling, because when it cycles, it just goes back and forth. There was a mother that called me when I first started running, and she said her son had mental health issues, and between the 2 weeks around the holidays, he had over 17 encounters with law enforcement because of his issues. So we need to make sure that these people are taken care of, that we do develop a system that is much more involved, that will help these people, that will get them the care. Right now, the mental health system is very fragmented, so we need to look at it overall and how do we correct that system. There are probably many of you that are in this room that go to the dentist periodically, every 6 months or every year. There's somebody who's kind of checking on you, and if you have a problem, you can go in and see them. But with mental health, that does not exist. So here we have a system that's very fragmented. People are just taken care of when they have an acute problem, but there is no overall, even between counties, there is not a lot of coordination, so that when someone is in one county and then goes to another county, there is no system to really follow up and continue their care and help them. And so they just wind up cycling, and that makes it's a big stress on the law enforcement, and it's a big stress on the healthcare systems that we have now. So we do need a lot of work in that area. Unfortunately, that's not considered a sexy area right now, such as heart disease or cancer, so that we could use a lot more resources in this area.
Okay, thank you. So this is directed towards all the candidates. Raise your hand if you subscribe to Imprimis, a free newsletter from Hillsdale College? If so, why do you read this? So are there any people subscribing to Imprimis here? It's a free newsletter. I'm not trying to make fun of the question, but I thought maybe you might have it without knowing it.
Is it
Okay.
edited by Mark Hinkles, or?
What?
Is it edited by Mark
Yeah.
Hinkles, I said?
Yeah, it's my one publication. Don't make fun of it. Okay. So this one's directed towards Paul Evans. Are you for or against the building of a third bridge to West Salem?
I am for any infrastructure project that will actually improve traffic conditions, decrease congestion, not close off the Rosemont exit, and not put tolling into effect for the city of Salem. The question right now, which unfortunately has been the subject of a continued baseless attack by my opponent and her sponsors, suggests that I have said that I am for the bridge that they have outlined, or that I'm against the bridge that they have outlined, when I have in fact said nothing of that, because the way that government actually works is that the city has to approve that process before it can move forward. The city right now has not gone forward with it. The mayor of Salem has been quoted in the paper, the Statesman, as saying that it's right now stalled and likely not going to move forward because there are questions that came about in the Land Use Board of Appeals process. I am absolutely for the 18 steps to reduce congestion that has come out of the Congestion Task Force in the city of Salem. I happen to believe we do need a third bridge out of West Salem. I think that there is alternative that can be taken in the meantime. I'm actually fine if the city decides to move forward with a location that has been the subject of this effort, but the solutions to the problems that were legitimately raised have yet to be solved, and I will repeat them again, especially for the folks that are liking to take me today. One, the ODOT study specifically says that the process that will be put in place by putting the bridge that is the subject of this controversy, it will empty into Pine Street in a part of Salem that will actually make congestion worse. Point two, the project as envisioned will close off the Rosemont exit. There's no solution yet for that. So all the folks that plan on going home on the Rosemont exit, there's an open question there. The third piece, even if the federal government made this a priority and the state was able to do what we could do, which I would do everything I could when the city says they want to move forward on it, there is still a local match requirement. And the bonding authority right now for the city of Salem is not sufficient to handle that by itself, much less the long-term sustainability issue. Tolling has been seen as one of the potential options as a part of that. So I go back to where I began. I am for a third bridge. I am for something that will reduce congestion. What I am not for is a fantasyland idea that somehow people can wave a wand, ignore land use law, ignore reality, not solve the problem that's addressed with the Rosemont exit, not seem to answer what would happen with 27 pilings in critical salmon habitat, and what would happen in Northeast Salem when the bridge empties into communities that are underbuilt already and cannot handle that load. So, again, I am looking forward to a third bridge that is well planned, a third bridge that is not going to line the pockets of folks that have been pushing this issue. I'm looking for a third bridge solution that the city of Salem actually passes through their council, and I will be right there to make sure that the city's will gets done.
Okay, this question is directed towards the House District 20 candidates. I'm very concerned about the direction of politics in this country and the rift between Democrats and Republicans. Negative campaign ads only aggravate this divide. What will you do, if elected, to minimize this divide and to bring politicians back together? Paul, why don't you go first, and Selma, you get to finish that question.
In the legislature, I run a committee of equal member Republicans and Democrats. I'm the only House committee that has 8 members. Usually there's a majority, whether it's 11 or 9, there's an odd number majority for the majority party. I actually was given an opportunity and asked to have an additional Republican, a guy by the name of Rick Lewis, join the committee, because I believe at the end of the day, the committee works best if it's even, and here's why. Because everybody effectively has a veto. Every party has the ability to say this is going too far one direction or too far the other. As the chair of the committee, I treated Representative Sal Escoval, who was the vice chair, as an equal, and together we pushed forward 37 pieces of legislation without a single dissenting vote and made good policy and put emergency management bills into effect that are now going to be able to save lives, and we were able to get veterans legislation passed that are affecting college campuses across the state, one in fact just down the hallway, and providing transportation and housing issues and health care for veterans that otherwise wouldn't get it because of the particularities of the VA benefit system. That said, in the last 7 weeks, somewhere between $350,000 to $550,000 has been spent by my opponent and her supporters on billboards, TV, and mailers calling me everything but a nice person. They have been doing everything possible not to advocate for a better agenda, not to talk about policies or principles, but to come after the kind of person I am, linking what are effectively accounting errors that every candidate in almost every race across the state and other races in the past few years have had challenges. We self-disclosed issues. We try to not hide a thing. We actually raise our hand and say we need to fix something. And for that honesty, we were called unethical and a lawbreaker. And on top of that, after the Statesman Journal weighed in, which was an unusual step, when the Statesman Journal called my opponent and her campaign on this, instead of stopping, they doubled down with something that was completely a lie, which has to do with the third bridge. So here's what I'm planning on doing when I'm in the legislature, a third term. There is a bill that I plan on introducing that has been in the works for the last 4 years, and it will create a commission of Democrats and Republicans and minor parties, as well as the independent party. It will have people that are sworn off of politics, they're retired, or they will put in that they won't be involved for the next 10 years. And that even number commission will have the opportunity to actually weigh in when candidates bring forward something that is not true. And when it is proven to be not true, there will be a statement put in the voters' pamphlet for that election that they crossed the line. Because at the end of the day, if we want a civil society, we want a society where you can actually reason together, we are incentivizing and rewarding the wrong things. It is not an accident that our society right now is coming apart at the seams because our leaders are being rewarded not for solving problems, but for being the most right or left, most Democrat or Republican. It's time for grown-ups to stand up and actually say, truth matters, facts actually matter, and that the elections should be about policies and principles and perspectives. So that's what I plan on doing in a third term.
Selma.
I think for people to work together, the key is communication. And I have always been involved in a lot of organizations in my community, and I have always communicated and done the best that I can to really work with everyone to make my community better. I am not involved with any of those negative ads. I am busy being the best candidate that I can be. I have spent many months going door to door so that I can meet who I will be working for. So if you look at my Facebook page or my web page, there is nothing other than about myself or as I'm trying to be the best candidate I can or about policy. So I am not involved in any of this. There are a lot of forces in politics other than the local races that are trying to do whatever their agenda is, and I am not privy to that. I am just a first-time candidate running, so I am not involved in any of this. So if you think that
I am involved, then you are wrong. I am sorry that you believe that. But if you look at it, I have been contacted by certain people in Washington, D.C. I have been contacted by Mr. Biden, Vice President Biden's campaign to be involved in his cancer summit. And he actually had reached out to several candidates and incumbents in this area. He reached out to their senators, and he reached out to some of our congressmen. But no one was interested in being involved. So that's another force that is involved in politics, because I understand Mr. Biden is thinking of running for president. So I was able to hold the summit. So there are forces of which I have no control. I'm just a citizen trying to do my civic duty, step up and run. So I do believe for us to get along, we need to do and have more communication. And I am very open to talking to people, listening to them. You notice that in this forum, a lot of people talk a bit, and I am not very verbal, because my interest is to listen to what the problems are, to listen to the people, and try to get what is best for them.
Okay. All right, now here's a question for all the Monmouth and Independence candidates, city council and mayor. So we'll just kind of start with John, work our way across there, and then come back this way, okay? All right, question. Please describe the ways that Monmouth and Indy are or should be supporting recreational opportunities for our citizens. And do you have plans on how to grow and foster new recreational opportunities for all citizens, including those with disabilities? John.
We are, in our park system, we're investing in equipment that would get to all levels of capability. We are looking to partner with Independence on a skate park upgrade that we've got a little bit of one right there on the S-curves if you're familiar, but I think there's conversations going on to enhance a skate park that would be sort of a little closer to the center perhaps and shared. I think that would be a good outreach. It would be cost effective, and you know, that's about all. Since I'm up first, I don't have a chance to think much about it, Mark. Thanks a lot. But those are things that I do know are going on, and we're excited to work with Independence on that. It would be a good deal if we could.
Okay, Steve.
This last week, City of Monmouth found out, excuse me, that we received a grant from the state Parks and Rec so that we could do a new Parks and Rec master plan, update that. Again, we've always been forward-looking in our parks master plan, so ADA accessible equipment is going to be a big part of that. There are some other things, like John mentioned, the skate park. Many of you have seen it there next to the ball field. The new location is going to be right at the intersection of Hogan and Main Street, and it's going to be about 3 times the size of the current skate park. We've had continuing. It's interesting because when you talk about recreation, you think of a park and equipment for kids to play, sports to play. But at the same time, recreation could be our senior center. And our senior center has been expanding and adding programs to help seniors to live longer, with some geriatric studies that they've been doing with the university to actually live more cognitive. And so we really have been doing a multi-generational piece through the city to enhance the lives of all generations of our citizens.
Okay. Well, we've done a bunch of things in Independence. You know, we have the sports fields that we have down by the river that We used the National Guard, and they came for 4 years and helped build a wonderful sports complex. And with the apartment complex in there, they also put in the irrigation that worked out really well. We have a linear park going in south part of town. They'll have a bike path that goes through the middle of that, along with playgrounds and things like that. You know, in our we just approved a parks master plan that eventually will include a splash pad in there. And again, all these things are all connected because there's going to be bike paths that go around from place to place, that all along the river, and wherever Marshall is, more bike paths. But
you smile.
Okay, I'm glad. But you know, we also have, you know, with the river there, we have people who are interested in kayaking and paddle boats that'll go in right there down by the with the amphitheater and the in the hotel area. So there's all those kinds of things. And our bike paths, they connect because people move from place to place, and it's good for our city and it's good for Monmouth if the flow of people along with bikes can move back and forth, so people can come and visit our fair city and come and enjoy the ice cream, the chocolate, all the desserts, and all the other. Say, I'm a former chamber president. You know, you promote whenever you get the chance, but bring folks down to have all sorts of wonderful goodies, and have our folks come and visit the folks in Monmouth also.
Thank you. That was a great segue. I definitely am in favor of recreational activities for everybody and opportunities for both communities. I have to step aside for a minute on one issue, and that's that I believe in the dynamic interchange between Monmouth and Independence, and we do not have enough of that now. And so continued and accelerated communication between both communities will let us do the good job we've done so far of coordinating these recreational activities. You notice that music in the park is on Wednesday, movies in Independence and concerts in Independence are on Thursday and Friday, so we don't compete with each other. I want to keep that spirit of good interchange between both communities going on, and widen it out beyond just recreation.
So I haven't focused a whole lot on recreation as I've been campaigning, but I have heard from people. About a year and a half ago, not related to campaigning, I was at a bike ped committee meeting in Monmouth, and Sean Irvine, the economic development director from Independence, was there. And one of the things that was floated was the idea about making a dedicated bike corridor between Monmouth and Independence. I think that'd be a great idea. Not to remind everybody of sidewalks again, but as far as low impact recreation, an awful lot of people like to go for a walk after dinner. And an awful lot of our major corridors don't have complete sidewalks. So that would be a simple solution for an awful lot of use. Another community member that I was talking to recently talked about the fact that they love to use that multimodal path up towards Recreational, but there's no lights on it. Nobody's going to use it at night. So if you've got a busy day and you like to run or bike, you're not going to use it, you're not going to feel safe. And that seemed like an awfully good project. So I am encouraged to hear people in the community stepping up with their ideas, and I'd love to hear more.
I'm kind of in a unique position here because I currently work as, in my position at the school district, we're sort of a hub of recreational activities in the community. A lot of facilities that the cities don't have and probably will never have exist in our schools. And we work with a lot of community groups to make our facilities available to the community. So I love this and am interested to find more folks who want to work together. Currently, Mayor McArdle mentioned the Independence Parks Master Plan. One of the parks is Henry Hill School, where our district offices are. We're basically part of the Independence Recreation Plan because we do have playgrounds and areas, softball fields and things, soccer fields that people use. And the school district wants to partner more with both cities to make those available. And just today, I spoke with a parent at Monmouth Elementary. The parent club there is actually putting together a plan to make their playground more accessible. So students with different abilities will have a better opportunity for that kind of recreation at the Monmouth Elementary School. If that's where we get it, we'll be working with Independence and everybody to make that available. So I love this question, and I love the partnerships we already have between the district and the two cities, and I think we can do more of that and look forward to that.
Yeah, in terms of Independence and Monmouth, I think they've both done a tremendous job. I can't give any more props on the parks. I thank the mayor and all his work that he's done to do that, and I think Monmouth's done a great job too. No complaints here on the park. You know, I think one of the highlights of the year for us is the concerts in the park and the movies in the park, and you know, they've done such a great job of putting together an atmosphere where everybody can get together and have a good time. And so no complaints, nothing but props on that from me. So that's good.
You know, I really appreciate this question, because this question is viewing Monmouth and Independence as one unit. And I know that the two cities, the two towns, may have their own character and may have their own needs, and I think all of that is wonderful and important to preserve those characters and be able to function as they are independently. But there's a huge avenue for further collaboration. I think there's a lot more we can learn from each other. I think there's a lot more we can collaborate with each other, and I think that all begins with communication. Going back to things that we've done in the past, I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel here. In the past, there have been joint council sessions. They have fizzled out over time. It's been a couple years since we've had one, and just like anything, you can't do a joint project if that communication isn't there. So talking about the bike paths, talking about these inter-community bike paths, talking about ways that we can structure our parks so that they're accessible from one community to the next. Talking about where in those communities they may need. The skate park is a really interesting spot because that's right on the border. But I'd like to talk about the communities holistically and look at them together and what we can do for one another. And I'd like to bring everybody together a little bit more often than 2 years so that we can make that happen.
I'd like to reiterate some of what, or agree with some of what Marilyn Morton said. As somebody who works in a museum, our cities have vastly different histories, but that doesn't mean we can't come together and collaborate. I certainly would like to see more of a cohesion between the two cities. There seems to be a great divide. It may not be apparent to most people. I've been here 4 years. I see it quite starkly. On the recreation side, I'm more inclined to be concerned about the four-legged variety of recreation than the two-legged variety. But Independence, I think, has done a wonderful job of reaching out to the community for ideas. I'd like to encourage much more of that. Both cities signed inclusivity resolutions last year. I think that's important that if we are really welcoming cities, that we welcome all of our residents. And I use that term intentionally rather than citizen. It's our residents that we need to be concerned about, and we need to solicit their ideas and their proposals and go forward with that.
My Winter Fest, that's Monmouth and Independence Winter Festival. I would like to see we have a party 4th of July. I would like to see maybe a winter festival, maybe expand the tree lighting ceremony. It's just an idea. I think type of collaboration like that we've talked about will just bring our communities together. I know from the Monmouth side, I would like to see movies in the park as well, not on a Friday night or a Thursday night, you know, keep that schedule that Marilyn mentioned. Those are just kind of the things, and of course, you know, we need to make sure we're inclusive to our kids with disabilities, make sure ADA accessible. Part of the sidewalk problem is making sure people can get to places, and I know with the transportation package, we've got the potential of Frawley's, which will help connect our towns even more. So students can go shop in Independence, and Independence people can come eat at Eastie and Momiji. So I think connecting our communities like that will go a long way.
You stole my speech.
Sorry.
My professional and my political career blend when it comes to transportation. I'm a transportation options program manager for Chariots, and so I bring to the council a lot of background in transportation. And for 2 years, I have been working on what they're calling the Frawley, and what that really means. That it's called a fake trolley. What it really is a rubber-tired trolley project. The university and the City of Independence and the City of Monmouth have already been working together. We've all signed a letter looking for funding so that we can do a feasibility study to see if having a transportation system, regardless of who's managing it at this point, it's just we want to look and see, will this work? And the reason that that associates with recreation is being able to connect people in all the community, with both the communities, with all the parks, with all of the events that go on. If it could ultimately connect people from the hotel to come up to music in the park on a Wednesday night, or to go out to a winery, not only do we then provide something for tourists and families and students and residents, but they will all be ADA accessible, so we'll be able to get people to medical appointments and those kinds of things. So that's a pet project. I don't want to say a pet project. That's a really important project to me that I put a lot of time and energy into, and I could see that would be a great way to start blending. What was it Marilyn said? The dynamic exchange. That's just perfect. That's exactly what we need with our communities and the university, the triad.
Well, thank you very much. Very thoughtful. This question is directed towards the two legislative candidates, and some you've already addressed it, but I'll allow you to elaborate. But what is your position, or how will you vote on Measure 106? Paul, you never got a shot at that one, and I don't think we've gone through so many ballot measures, but I think there was one that you got to address, and I believe it was 106 that you did not get to, Paul.
I thought I did, but I'll say it again.
Say it again.
I'm still against it.
Okay. Never mind. Okay. This is also for the House District 20 candidates. Please explain the challenges facing infrastructure development in the state of Oregon. Paul, go first, and Soma second.
So infrastructure development is one of those things that you imagine an iceberg. Imagine an iceberg that is not just big and cold and dangerous, but an iceberg that actually is never ending on the bottom. The infrastructure that the state of Oregon has is not adequate for the current population, and it is woefully inadequate for the projected population that we believe will be coming. What does that mean? It means this. We would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $29 to $30 billion just to get bridges up to where they would have been by 2010 levels. What that means is we don't have that much money. The state budget, total state budget, including federal dollars, is $78 billion. State budget, absent federal dollars and absent the revenue streams that come from fees, or general fund budget, is about $18 billion. What I'm trying to say is this. We were struggling to get a $5.3 billion transportation package out the door, calling it massive, and it had some things in it that I didn't like, so I ended up not actually voting for it. But the size and scale of our problem is significant. And it's not something that is easily solved, because much of our investment in infrastructure was done during the 1950s and 60s. So we have been doing our best to maintain it, but deferred maintenance is never the most favored priority when you are trying to weigh options of, do we put money into schools, do we put money into roads and bridges, do we put money into healthcare, do we put money into other things. What I have been trying to do through my committee, quite frankly, as the chair of the House Veterans and Emergency Preparedness, is prioritize lifeline routes and focus on the connectivity between seismic, retrofit, and rehabilitation. And if everything goes bad, which we believe will happen in our lifetimes because of the every 300+ year cycle of rips along the Cascadia subduction zone, we not only have a problem of just keeping and maintaining roads to get goods to market, but we also have to have an eye on having lifelines so that after a catastrophic event, when we likely will have 19 islands on the coast and not be able to get food and medical supplies to people, we have to target our priorities. So it is a balancing act of trying to ensure that the most critical problems affecting interstate travel are dealt with, because we can, quite frankly, leverage more federal dollars that way, and still prioritize state-only areas that are lifeline routes. That's one of the reasons why I fought so hard to get $60 million put in the budget this year for a seismic upgrade of the Center Street Bridge. In 7 years or less, it will be able to withstand a 9.0 earthquake. It's not there now. And the thing is, every year we don't keep up with deferred maintenance, and every year we grow and don't meet that need, there's an exponential cost, opportunity cost, and the problem is we will never catch up with it. What that means is it's very difficult to try and maintain and even invest in a dynamic economic environment if you can't offer good infrastructure that's going to be around and meets the needs, in addition to our other challenges with healthcare, with education, and everything else. So my overall statement about infrastructure, it is the big, huge 800-pound gorilla in the room that nobody really wants to talk about, but it's something that we're going to have to figure out to at least get to a point where we have a better, closer approximation of what can actually at least sustain the kind of economy we need to support our state.
Okay.
When we're talking about infrastructure, it involves a lot of things. We also have to think about rural versus urban. When my husband ran for governor a couple of years ago, we were able to go all around the state. And there are areas, we have decent internet here, but there are areas in Eastern Oregon where there is none. And so for the rest of the state to really stick with us and stick with the future and move ahead, they would need a lot of infrastructure investment. The roads that we are experiencing here are not adequate because people must be liking Oregon because they want to move here. If you've ever been to Portland, it used to take an hour to get there from here. Now it's 2 hours, sometimes even 3. So when you look at the roads there are not adequate. And there has been talk about tolling what is existing. But who does that affect the most? That affects the people that can least afford it. So there are, what can we do instead of trying to toll the roads and having to pay to go through Portland? And I understand the tolls they're talking about are not a set amount, but they would be dynamic depending on the time of day and how much traffic there was. So you would not know how much you were paying. We also need to think about cyber attacks. A lot of things are running on the internet or through computers. And the other day there was a attack supposedly on Facebook users of about 50 million. That's quite a few accounts. So what are we doing to protect our systems, our computer systems from attack? We also have to remember that just this summer we had an issue with water in Salem. The water was supposedly contaminated with toxins, cyanotoxins, and so it was no longer drinkable. And I had never experienced that anywhere. We've always been actually one of the few countries where you can turn on the taps and you can get water and you can drink it. But this is something that needs to be examined also. So we also need to think about our ports. We had the port of Portland that was closed down. And so farmers and other people trying to get commerce across the state or into other areas where they can sell their goods and be sustainable of their own economy have to think about where does that leave us if we are on the West Coast and we do not have a functioning port. There has been talk about trying to do an intermodal transportation system where we would have to perhaps send goods or in trucks or in containers to a certain area. They're looking at Albany and Brooks, and then taking by rail to Tacoma versus when the Port of Portland closed, we also were able, they had to move goods just by truck to get to Tacoma, and that created an extra expense for all the people that are creating goods here in the state. And that would also add to the infrastructure problem. We also have bridges. When we talk about the bridge over the Willamette between Salem, West Salem and the rest of Salem. That's one bridge. But we are also in competition with Portland area. They have bridges there too. As you know, it's known as the City of Bridges, because with trying to garner some of the federal dollars that we can build this, we also are in competition with the more urban areas. So we need to think of an infrastructure situation and think about it as over the whole state and not in just our area, because there are many needs. There are, because there are people with their economy in other areas that do need a lot of support. Yes, it's very, very expensive, and we do have to prioritize, but these are, this is a great problem if we want to keep up with other states, if we do want to also be competitive in the world.
Okay, and bringing infrastructure a little closer to home, Selma, do you favor a third bridge over the Willamette River?
Yes, I do favor a third bridge over the Willamette River. We have a lot of congestion, not just between Salem and West Salem, but it also causes gridlock downtown every day. If you remember, not too many years ago, there was a gentleman that tried to commit suicide by jumping off the Marion Street Bridge. That created gridlock that went on for hours, probably about 10 hours. There was no one that could get home, even between Kaiser and South Salem, and everyone was trying to go through by going down River Road and crossing over in Independence, which probably impacted everyone here. That was the most horrific thing that I had ever seen. I had never seen gridlock like that. And so, yes, I am for the third bridge. Also, we are having to consider the possibility of Cascadia. If those bridges come down, and we had a difficult time with just the water situation, think of what would happen if the Polk County and other communities that were to the west of Salem need to get to services, need to get to Salem Hospital, because that is the major hospital in this area. The other thing is, part of our problem is this area is growing. People love Oregon, and I say it's a beautiful state, and I'm fortunate to live here. But they're not going to go away. So we need to plan for the future. So we need to have a bridge. Thank you.
Okay. So this question is directed towards the mayoral candidates of both cities. We're going to start with Independence, and then we'll go to Monmouth. What will you do if you become mayor to foster a more productive, professional, and more importantly, how will you, the city managers, and city staff work together to support both cities' needs and wants in all areas of city business? So why don't we start with Jack, please?
Well, I have to think about that one for a second. I believe how we can start turning things around is figuring out what is our, you know, what is our liabilities, why are we paying to you know, take care of different areas in our government, and you know, I'm sorry, the emphasis of the question is what? Say it again.
Yeah, that kind of has 2 points to it.
Yeah.
I'll read the whole question again. And
thank you.
What will you do if you become mayor to foster a more productive, professional, and more importantly, how would you, the city managers, and city staff work together to support both cities' needs and wants in all areas of city business?
Okay, all right, so, you know, for one, in both cities' needs, I'm a big advocate of we need to do more. Independence needs to do more in conjunction with the city of Monmouth. I think our fire people situation has been very successful. Our police work together very well. Both Bob and Daryl are just tremendous police chiefs, and in terms of safety and the protection that we have in our town, it's just tremendous. I think that we can actually, you know, build on that and do other things together that would be, I think we need to get over our egos and pride and say, hey, where can we work together in order to create, you know, a better environment for all of us. And I really think Independence and Monmouth could do so much more together. I really do. For instance, I'm in the building industry, you know. Well, they've got a great inspector down there in Monmouth, and we've got a good guy in Independence also. But, you know, whenever our guy is off hunting or whatever, there's nobody there. There's nobody there to cover. And, you know, I've called for inspections, and we're not able to get them because we're not working together with the city of Monmouth. And that's a shame. And I think that that's a problem that goes into many areas. And so whether it's Cease or Kevin, I think that I would be very effective in figuring those things out and you know, achieving a successful environment for both communities.
Okay, John?
Thank you. Well, let me tell you a couple things that already happened. At the staff level, as has been mentioned, our folks work together in lots of different ways because they have to. We cover for each other every day. There's even a water pipe line that connects the two cities. So if one side gets jammed up, you flip the valve and there's a way to do that. So there's already at the staff level a real clear working together. Second of all, the mayors, the city managers, the county commissioners, and our federal representatives meet together monthly at 7 a.m. on a Friday morning in Dallas. It's early and dark. But we get together on a regular basis and we talk about the issues that are facing us individually, collectively, regionally, because sometimes the mayor of Salem comes over to join us along with the folks from Dallas, and we talk about those kind of issues. You know, we work together, heck, we work together at the 4th of July. And you see, you know, the previous mayors and I, we're shoveling along with our city managers. Why? Because we work together, we talk to each other. You know, I've had the mayors to my home. We've been together for pizza and having a drink together and talking about stuff. Can we do better? You always can do better. But there is an attitude of working together at many different levels that doesn't get talked about. It's not the fancy stuff. It's the nuts and bolts stuff. How are we going to do this? And frequently the school district gets involved too. And we're just talking about how to move our community forward. Because that's one of the things that all the mayors I've worked with are interested in helping move the community forward. And what can we do? And there's a lot of mutualism that goes back and forth. How can I help you? How can you help me? We go back and forth with that. And so, can we do better? Yes, we can always do better at all levels of government. But I think it's to say that it doesn't exist is, I wouldn't go there.
Okay. Kevin, would you like to speak next?
Sure. So first we need to know our limitations. And in Monmouth, in our charter, Section 6, I cannot direct city employees, tell them how to do their job. That's the city manager's job. Maybe the questions for mayor. I run a business, so I try to treat everything professional. I also like to have fun and make fun of myself a lot. So I will make fun of myself, but not anyone else. With that being said, you know, we're going to have a Meet Your Mayor Monday, as I said. I want to make myself available to citizens to hear them in a professional setting and let them know that I'm actually paying attention and listening to them. So.
Okay, Cease.
I think as John said, and he's sitting next to the current mayor, Mr. Milligan, and we do a lot together. We already do. And as we've talked about, it's really at the staff level that the work is done, and that's not seen by folks. So if people feel like there's some animosity or competition or something at any other level, we need to do something to get past that. I consider myself, and have for years, a Monmouth-Indendence person. I asked my daughter's friends one time, now that you're all in college, where do you tell people you're from? Well, they say they're from Monmouth-Indendence, right? They don't say they're from Independence or Monmouth. We see ourselves as one community. 2 cities, 1 community. And trying to get rid of whatever that perception is that we don't get along, that we don't work together, I think is really important. I feel real fortunate having actually known Mr. McCardle since we were in high school together, and having known Jack for many years, that the relationships that I already have with the city councilors, with the city staff in Independence, and I just think we can only get better, as John said. There's a lot of work to do to show people how much we do have in common. To celebrate each other's successes, I think, is what's most important. And feel like we can do that and really share our story to the rest of the world. Our work with the Chamber, our joint work in other ventures, we just need to brag on ourselves a little bit more about that.
Okay, so the next question is directed towards the Monmouth and City Council candidates. And so what we'll do is, why don't we start with the Independence City candidates again, and then we'll move to the Monmouth. And what does the end of MINET look like, or do you think we should keep it subsidized forever? Would you like to start?
Well, I have to make a disclosure first.
This one's kind of awkward.
And that's that I work for MINET. I am the office administrator at MINET. And I will say that before I ever pursued that job, or actually they pursued me for that job, I did check in with my city staff and my mayor to make sure that that was not an overwhelming conflict of interest. And there are many times during council meetings that I recuse myself from votes because or even discussion, because it's something to do with MINET. And as far as the end of MINET, I think we're going to see a lot more progress made, and I have to, like I say, I'm disclosing, I'm speaking from a more knowledgeable position from having working at MINET. We are going to see the end of the subsidies. We are going to see the end of the debt. MINET has been making tremendous inroads on the debt, and one of the reasons that we are going to Dallas is because there simply is not enough property, there is not enough population in Monmouth and Independence to be able to manage that debt. So our GM has spent 5 years looking for other opportunities for income for MINET. And what we ended up with was a partnership with an investment company that is taking all of the risk and all of the cost of moving into Dallas, and MINET will be operator of the system and reaping income that will go directly towards payment of the debt.
Okay, thank you.
Are you doing it by city or just?
Well, I was hoping to do it by city just because it makes more sense, yes.
Yeah. I don't know about the end of the subsidy, but I will say that I'm very encouraged by people's interest in MINET and the focus on the debt. I would hope that if people are truly concerned, that they find the time to get actively involved on the MINET board. One thing I will say about MINET that I'm very supportive of is their position on net neutrality. That's of great importance to me.
Great. Okay, and so if you want to start the far end.
How do you want to do this?
I think it's a city.
Well, it's city council people.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to cut you out, but you get your own questions. That's fine. Why don't we start at that end and work our way here, and then we'll finish up with John, because I rushed him evidently earlier.
Okay. Well, I'll say, as an independent developer, when I moved here 9 years ago, I was thrilled to find out that an independent software developer, I suppose I should clarify, since we have other kinds of developers on the forum here. I was thrilled to find out a small town had high-speed internet. And I understand that it was originally founded as a business development tool, not just to serve homes. I happen to mix since I work from home. But I don't know long term. I would be very surprised if MINET did not get the debt problem under control. I know that they went through some restructuring a year or two ago. I've heard good things about the new management and how they're handling planning for the future, provisioning new equipment, and I'm looking forward to seeing them turn a profit. I don't see why they wouldn't.
It seems that MINET is something that is oft misunderstood. And to be quite honest, I think that the majority of us up here don't have a full handle on exactly how MINET is run and exactly where things go or where things come from. And I think that misunderstanding is a problem. I know that in the public-private partnership that's gone on, especially the expansion that's gone on to Dallas, it's very complicated. And saying that it's complicated is not an excuse not to engage the public so that they understand. This is something that we all share. The debt is something that we all share. And I'll echo the voices before me that all things come to an end, as will the MINET debt. This expansion toward Dallas, initially when I looked at it, I thought, oh gosh, great. You know, what are we getting into now? And I think that there are a lot of people that felt the same way. Upon looking into it more deeply, upon going to council meetings when MINET is on the docket, upon sitting and observing work session meetings, there's a lot of meat in the work sessions. If you haven't gone to a council meeting and stayed for the work session, that's where some interesting things happen. So we are on the right track, and I like to see us get all the way there. But along the way, I do feel like we owe it to ourselves and to our communities to better explain exactly where we are so that people can be informed going forth.
So when I started on council in March, I sat down with the city manager because one of the things I had heard a lot about was MINET. And so I asked our city manager, Scott McClure, to give me the background, and he gave me the 1-hour version as opposed to the 40-hour version. Then when I knew this was coming up for vote about the expansion, I went and met with the general manager of MINET, and I asked him for the dollars and cents for the information. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement because it was going to be this public-private partnership. He did explain to me how MINET started, is that there wasn't going to be any other service in the two communities. So that's why it started. It wasn't that there were all these competing forces. There was nothing else. And so MINET got started. They've hit their bumps and starts. From what the general manager shared with me, and now that the expansion, everybody knows about it out in Dallas, my understanding is, yes, there will be a sunset on the subsidies, and that eventually the community will simply be paying for their service, not paying the debt service.
John? There is a lot I misunderstood about MINET, I've been on the MINET board now for 4 years, and it's been a big learning curve for me. I'm not a tech guy, not a lot of real business acumen when it comes to the high-tech world, but I think I've learned a fair amount, and it's worth reminding people that this is a public project put together by the citizens of Monmouth-Indendence. We decided that we would provide and we would obtain internet service for ourselves because it was not readily available from anyone else. There were some mistakes made along the way, I believe, and I think there was some overselling of opportunity and potential. However, with the new management that we've brought on board in the last 5 years, I think that's turned. The cities own the debt. MINET pays at the moment somewhere between, well, the last 6-month payment, I think they paid 55% of the debt. Typically they're paying around 65% of the debt. So the cities are still subsidizing that. In the city of Monmouth, we take a loan from our electric, Monmouth Power and Light, that over time will be paid back. That's the way we have it structured. So there's good things there. We ought to, in many ways, we ought to celebrate what MINET provides. High-speed internet that is, better than most, if not the best, certainly in the area. Selma can come over and upload or download her movies as she wishes, because we got darn good internet over here. But seriously, it's not as easy as just saying, well, just get on the stick. The Dallas project is one that has lots of opportunity. There's capacity in the MINET operation at the moment, so it's not going to cost us a whole lot of operational dollars. All of those will be passed on to the Dallas consumer. So it's a good opportunity. It's a good service, and we've got kind of coming out of the woods. So we ought to be happy with it.
So I'd like to get my comment in.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. In 1998, I was a network administrator for a company in Portland, and I moved down to Monmouth. When I got to Monmouth, after working for a company that had a T1 connection, all we had was dial-up. I remember that little tweaky little weird sound. And a technology task force was started to try and look at, could we entice other companies to come to Monmouth. We actually went to Quest at the time and offered them $500,000 if they'd start to look at, could they bring the feasibility of bringing fiber to Monmouth. And they flat out told us no, because Monmouth wasn't enough. Even if we seeded it, it wasn't enough for them to come. And we found out through the Bonneville Power Administration that we actually had the access through a rural electric, what do I want to say, decision years ago. Because we're rural and electric had to be provided by Bonneville Power Administration to the cities, that they have fiber all along their line, and because we were an independent utility in Monmouth, we could actually tie into that fiber. And we tied into that fiber. So what I want to talk about isn't what's the end of MINET, because MINET may end. The debt's going to end, but fiber is the next asphalt. It was one of the smartest things that we did. It may have had its risks. I'm going to guess back when Monmouth Power and Light got started, it had its risks. But it's reaped rewards for all of us. And I think we keep getting caught up in this thing of who's subsidizing MINET. We are MINET, and we're paying for our investment. It's not a subsidy. It is our city investment in the infrastructure that's going to make sure that not only we can get to Facebook or Google something, but that our kids have an education that's world class, that they have access to the things, that the university can thrive and research and invest in all our futures. And so if we get hung up in this debt that MINET has, which if you looked at our budget document, will end in the next 24 years or less, maybe 20 years, but the infrastructure that we put in place will last way far into the future and will make a huge difference for not only us as residents now, but the residents who come to Monmouth-Indendence and Dallas far into the future.
Thank you.
And I got to be part of bringing that to you guys.
Well spoken.
Okay. Well, time's come to an end. There were 17 questions, non-redundant questions I just couldn't get to. But one thing I can say is these are people that make themselves available. And the beauty of state and local representatives in Oregon and local candidates of all kinds is there's an accountability here. And accountability begins with voting. So contact them, ask them questions, and then vote. Thank you. Have a nice evening.